Fake news has become the bane of our time. There is no doubt about the perils of misinformation. But who decides what is fake news? And can the government of the day have the final say on what fake news is and order it to be taken down? If that's the case, what's to stop any government from deeming all news not to their liking or that questions them as fake? It is this very serious concern raised by the Editors Guild of India over a proposal to amend the IT Rules 2021. Here's what has happened. A proposal by the central government says that social media platforms and websites, also known as intermediaries, will have to effectively take down any news that the Press Information Bureau determines as fake. Here's how it has been done. All intermediaries, that means websites, social media platforms, etc., are protected against legal action for what third parties put on their platform. For example, if someone says something illegal on a platform like Facebook, FB is not responsible for it legally. This indemnity or protection is given to social media platforms on certain conditions. And one of the new conditions being proposed is that anything that the government says is fake should be taken down if platforms are to continue enjoying this indemnity. So who will decide what is fake news or false information? In this case, the PIB, the Press Information Bureau, that is a government agency whose job it is to disseminate information on everything the government does, or any agency that is appointed by the central government. This condition also extends to any news concerning, and I'm quoting here, any business of the central government. Now, look at the scope of that. Any business of the central government could cover, well, pretty much anything the government does. Now, the Editors Guild of India has raised serious questions and concerns over this. In a press statement, this grouping of editorial leaders has said determination of fake news cannot be in the sole hands of the government. They say this will muzzle the freedom of the press and force social media intermediaries to take down content the government does not like. So has fake news become a fake tool to muzzle the press? To speak on this, I'm joined now by Sanjay Kapoor. He's the editor of Hard News magazine and the former General Secretary of the Editors Guild of India. He's also a current member of the EGI. I'll be speaking in some time with Sanjay Hegde, Senior Advocate in the Supreme Court. Sanjay Jha, author, is with me on the show. And I'm also speaking with Arvind Gupta, the head of the Digital India Foundation. Welcome to all of you and thank you for speaking with us. Mr. Sanjay Kapoor, can I begin with getting your view on this amendment proposal? It's a draft amendment. And why this extent of concern from the AGI and editorial leaders?
As you write, thank you for inviting me to speak on this very important topic. As you pointed out, I'm no longer the office bearer, but I was General Secretary a few months ago. And but my views remain the same as expressed by the office bearers. I think this entire move smacks of censorship, a kind of emergency kind of situation, because Editors Guild came into existence in the 70s at the time when, the editors did not, take on the pressure that was mounted by the government during emergency, and they decided that no more would they be, willing to wilt whenever something like this happens. And they realized that it has very serious implications for the freedom of the press. And it's important that they should take this matter up, because if you look at it, the entire business of fake news, if it has to be decided by the government without the consultation that is critical with the publications, with the entities which have actually come up in terms of identifying what is fake news, like you have fact-checking websites like you have Boom and you have Alt News and many others which are there. Till then, they will be totally one-sided, because at the end of the day, if you look at it, there is plenty of, information which is disagreed by by critical media about what comes out from the government. So government itself can't be said to be totally immune from these allegations. And it has happened that we must have noticed also.
Let me play devil's advocate here. Many will say that it is the government's job to protect the public from the menace of fake news. How is the government to do that if they are questioned? Isn't it their job to protect the public from the menace of fake news? What would be your response to that?
No, government has a responsibility to protect its citizens under, from many other dangers that exist there. But you have to go by the nature of the press in this country, which has to be adversarial. It has been created to, question the government on key issues. And if the government is going to decide what is to be printed and what should not be printed, time and again, you'll have a situation where the government would be on the wrong side. And that is where, this is the only pillar of democracy which is in the private sector. You have everything in the government, and this is the only thing which is outside the system. And that there was a reason for doing it, to take a very critical eye over whatever is being stated. And that is what has been, the basic basis of our democracy. And it has done very well in the last 70 years. If you recall, if you have, before you had the phenomenon of internet, there wasn't many allegations of fake news. It has come in because more people have now the power to write and the power to introduce concepts and ideas and reports on the internet in the public domain, and many things start going viral. So I think it is important to be cognizant of this phenomena. But at the same time, if you look at the publications, what can really, give some kind of clarity and correctness to the whole thing? If there is some kind of editorial rigor which has brought in the organizations that we are talking about, invariably what happens that you have citizen journalists who write whatever they feel like. You have individuals who introduce stuff on, the social media platform, and that is where the problem lies.
Yeah, so it's a wide canvas, and like I said in the beginning of the show, fake news is a real concern. But is this being used as a tool? Is fake news being used as a tool to decide what is published and what is not? Sanjay Jha, does this put more pressure on the intermediaries? Can an intermediary tomorrow turn around and say, I won't do this? Because this is the conditionality for the indemnity they enjoy against third-party lawsuits. Essentially, this is part of what enables them to exist. So they will have no choice but to take down something the PIB or any other agency appointed by the government says is fake.
Tamanna, it's good to be on your program, and a good evening to both my fellow panelists. I agree with what Mr. Kapoor has mentioned wholeheartedly. I'll tell you for the simple reason. The government is not an abstraction. The government is not some kind of a concept. It is a political party that has been voted into power to govern the country. And what does the political party stand for? It stands for power. Now, unfortunately, whether it's a dictatorship or a democracy, whichever example you wish to take, no political party likes to actually combat criticism if it is especially going to be hurtful electorally or damages the reputation of its leaders. I'll give you one example. Tamanna, if tomorrow people like us comment on the GDP of India being 2% above what is currently being postulated because of the way it was hiked on account of readjustment of the GDP in 2014, which, by the way, is an economic reality, the government of India can say that Sanjay Jha is spreading fake news. And please remember, Tamanna, tomorrow when they say that you can't use this item as a fake news item, it is not just about that, that post or a tweet being in public currency. There is another serious consequence that anybody can be accused of spreading it, and you next have an FIR and you could be in jail. I mean, there are serious criminal consequences of spreading fake news. So tomorrow, one, the government can, of course, impose its own free will and decide what it wants to do. As somebody who's been part of the opposition to this government, I have always maintained that it has a very palpable authoritarian predisposition. And there are enough examples. The Supreme Court has gone on record.
No, so I want to make it clear. This is a concern no matter which government is in power. I don't think any government is going to let go of a tool like this once it is given to them. No political party, no entity, no government wants to hear anything negative about themselves.
Absolutely. And Tamanna, this is the real duality or the dichotomy of politics. When a party is in power, it believes that it is going to be there in perpetuity. And I think this is where the political parties need to recognize tomorrow, if the BJP were to lose in
All right.
2024 and the Congress were to kind of actually take advantage of this ridiculous, preposterous law, it's the BJP that will come to, kind of protest on your show like the way I'm doing right now.
No, but it's not about the BJP or the Congress. It's about the freedom of the press, the rights of the people of this country, and the role of the fourth pillar in democracy. It transcends, I'm afraid, partisan politics. Arvind Gupta, thank you for coming on the show. What's your take on this? And why do you think this amendment has been inserted in an already pretty controversial bill, in a controversial act? The IT Act itself is facing fire over several, parts of it. Why do you think this introduction has been made, and will it really help the problem of fake news, or is it going to be a tool to muzzle the press?
Okay, Tamanna, thank you for having me on the show. We have, Sanjay Kapoor and Sanjay Jha and on the show, and they've commented. Let me give you my views and also rebut some of the things they have said, because
Right.
I come from an era which Sanjay Jha would identify, where in 2012 and 13, Mr. Sibal wanted to in their government pre-censor everything that went onto the internet. So I'm very cognizant of the fact that there should be no censorship. And our Prime Minister at that point in time objected to any form of social media or any other censorship. But this is where I think this issue is very, very separate. Mr. Sanjay Kapoor talked about how citizen journalists or user-generated content can actually be fake, and only the editors technically don't spread fake news, and that's where I disagree with him. It's not anybody who's just got a stamp of a backing of a media house, an organized media houses not spreading fake news. There's been umpteen instances where people have had to withdraw their stories or actually correct themselves when pointed out by the vastness and of the data and intelligence available on social media. So social media has changed the game. But here is what the current situation is. Let's go back and all the platforms today, which are called intermediaries, actually deploy a third-party fake news checker who helps them. And if there is that third party, whichever that third party is, if the links are identified as fake, they are obliged to take them down, and that's part of their commitment, the platform's commitment to take down fake news. Now, in the process, what we have seen is that the fake news checkers have become activists, and that's a very, very clear known fact. And it's not, we don't have the kind of fake news checkers that we should have produced by now over the last 4 or 5 years. And it's very unfortunate that the fake news checkers themselves have become fake news peddlers, and of course, very, very partisan. And the third thing, what we are seeing is humongous amount of fake news, misinformation being spread from cross-border, being spread from many angles. And maybe this is a 5% problem originating from India, but 95% originating from cross-borders. So what is the government asking? And this is where I want to be very clear. What is the government saying? That, platforms, hey, all of you tend to believe an IFCN certified, an international body, and you are using your own mechanism. One of the mechanisms we want to have is a PIB plus any other bodies that we authorize. So instead of going by just blindly by what IFCN, that a US-based body says, these are internationally internationally certified fact checkers, we want to have a say, and that either PIB or organizations which PIB
Mr.
says.
Gupta, you don't find that concerning?
No, let me just explain that to you. Say that it is the links that or the news that it has after a due diligence process certified to be fake news that needs to be taken off. And that is where the Section 70
may I ask you, what is this due diligence process, and what authorizes the PIB to do it? What makes the PIB competent to do it?
PIB is building competence like any other body in building a competence around certifying fake news. What gives authority to a X Live or a B Live or a C Live to say this is fake news? It's done by a due diligence process, and PIB is building that over the years. You've seen that. The last point I want to make is whether it's editor guilds or any other body, if they want to strengthen democracy in India and they want to strengthen national security and put this process at place, they should work with PIB or certain neutral good bodies which are not activists to strengthen this detection of fake news process.
Okay.
Because this
may I ask, you've mentioned a very important word. Mr. Gupta, you've mentioned a very important word, which is neutral. One second, sir. One second, I don't want the nuance to be lost. So please allow me. You mentioned a very important word, which is a neutral body. Don't you see the very clear and blatant conflict of interest here? How can PIB be the neutral body? They are run by the government. They have the power to say something that the government does not like is fake. The government, in this sense, is an interested party because the job of the media is to hold truth to power and to hold democratically elected governments accountable for their functioning. Don't you see the very clear conflict of interest there?
And I'm
what
very
about
clear
that?
in saying that. I'm very clear. PIB plus other bodies can be strengthened. And this is where we always think fake news is against the government. We are actually typecasting fake news against one particular thing. Fake news is happening every day against organizations. I mean, I'll give you an example. No, it is. This is the epidemic. It was happening against the vaccines. We saw it happening against during COVID.
Correct. Fake news is all over the place.
So this is, I think it is wrong.
But you're giving the power to determine this to one body. I want to introduce Sanjay Hegde also into the conversation. He's also joined us. So it's Arvind Gupta versus 3 Sanjays today. I have a lot of Sanjays on the panel. So I'll be specific on which one I'm speaking to. Sanjay Hegde. Thank you for joining in. We've been talking about this new notification and this amendment where effectively social intermediaries need to take down something, if this goes through, that the PIB says is fake news. The Editors Guild is very concerned about this and we've been talking about it. I want to understand the legal definition or the legal standing of fake news. What laws do we have in this country right now to address fake news, and can the government put in place something like this?
Well, the government can use its legislative power to do anything that it wants. But right now, we are not even talking of legislation. We're talking of delegated legislation. Under its rule-making power, it has made something. The law normally leans against pre-censorship. Now, what the government wants is that it has converted the Press Information Bureau into the Ministry of Truth, something straight out of George Orwell. They will certify what news is fake and what is not fake. That, and they will also have the power that the moment they certify something as fake, they are the social media intermediaries are obliged to bring it down immediately. See, that I do not think that it would fly constitutionally. You have the power of free speech, and it can be subject only to certain limited restrictions. Now, the restriction can't be that the government thinks that it is fake, whereas somebody else asserts that it is true. If it is true, or a news organization stands by its story, the normal remedy in law would be either a defamation suit or a complaint or any other legal procedure. Just saying that I am the government, I certify what is fake and what is not fake will not fly.
Yeah. Mr. Arvind Gupta, your response to that? That the concern is that the PIB, with the blessing of the government, becomes the final authority to decide what is fake, what is not fake. And you're right, fake news could extend to, topics beyond the government, but we're talking specifically here. Because you wield the stick as the government.
Yeah, and that is precisely what I've said is the government wants to have the provisions in place that whether PIB or other bodies, neutral bodies, that it certifies. Why should the certification only come from IFC? And that's the point I'm trying to make, which is what the norm is. All the platforms are following that.
There is no certification from anyone right now. Which certification are we talking about?
There is a process, Tamanna. Please, there is a certified fake news process. It's called the International Fact Checking Network. It's called IFCN certification. Then only you technically.
No, but right now,
so
a piece of news that the IFCN says is fake is not required to be taken down.
IFCN certification is necessary for what you consider fake news fact checkers are technically not fake news checkers. They have to be certified by IFCN.
I'm talking about the consequence, not the label. The consequence now is not that if IFCN or XYZN says something is fake, it's taken down.
You are ready to accept an INCN certified body organization.
No, nobody should have the right to take something down just because someone said so. Sanjay Jha wants to come in. Yes, Sanjay Jha.
Tamanna, I want to make two short points. Number one, I repeat what I said earlier. The government is represented by a political party, and a political party has its own agenda. I mean, it is very nice of Arvind to actually indulge in making all the right, appropriate, politically correct statements. But Arvind will have to agree that the biggest peddler of fake news can be the government, which in this case, let me tell you, it is hardly a secret, Tamanna. I'm not making any malicious allegation. It is in the public domain that the BJP IT cell post Arvind Gupta has been notorious for spreading the most malignant information, and in fact has also gone and attacked fact-checking sites. So what are we talking about? I mean, the biggest worry that one has, Tamanna, is not just what the government will flag as fake news, which is a criticism. The bigger worry is what the government will not flag as a fake news, which is being supplied by the political party in power. And that can be extremely catastrophic.
No, and for a change, Sanjay, I will agree with you. This has to be something which, as I said, and I've used the word, is actually neutral. Whether X party spreads it or Y party spreads it, I think we have to be very clear that this is a process that as a democracy, I use the word, that we require. As a democracy, we require proper fake news checking, fact news checking, so that misinformation and fake news does not spread. And I think this is I mean, what I'm trying to say is we're trying, the intent of the PIB or other related bodies is the correct intent. We today trust activists as fact news checkers. We need a better process of doing that.
No, but there is no consequence to the trust. I think we're obfuscating, because right now, if XYZ agency says something is fake news and I see it on my timeline, I might agree or disagree depending on whether it suits me, right?
But Tamanna,
because we've all gone into our little bubbles.
Do you know Facebook?
But you are talking about consequence. Sanjay Kapoor wants to come in. Yes, Sanjay Kapoor.
We
have three Sanjays to deal with today. Yes, Mr. Sanjay Kapoor.
Let him
just come in and then I'll give you rebuttal. Arvind, you're getting rebuttal to everyone. Let everyone just make the point and then you get rebuttal. Yes.
I agree with the idea of a neutral thing, but the whole problem with this notification which has come in, which is that there is no attempt to consult with media bodies. There was no attempt to get them on board and try to figure out that this menace is there and how do we go about it. It seems so one-sided, and it only feeds the impression that there is an attempt by the government to control the narrative. And you know what happens in the US. You had Mr. Donald Trump going around telling the CNN, News, New York Times, all the mainstream media was peddling fake news. So when you have, you have politicians, as time and again, Sanjay Jha has been saying that they do not represent neutrality. Although the government has to be a counterweight, a countervailing force to the corporate sector, but it seldom does in these circumstances. You have to devise ways where the neutrality can be not only spoken, but should be implemented in the right sense of the word. And that is only possible if you engage with more people who seem to be adversarial. You have a problem with activist fact checkers. These are circumstances in which even people who are doing a job are activists, like journalists who question the government are seen to be activists, which is wrong. I mean, there are a lot of people who just do their job, ask questions, and asking questions is resented. So this is a very strange time. So neutrality is going to be a very difficult thing to achieve, Arvindji.
Neutrality
So
is
can
the
I-
question
Simona,
and the
can
question
I-
of consequence. Yes, Arvind Gupta, please respond. But I just want to, get you to speak on a specific point. You're talking
two things
about
you need to understand.
independent
Two
people
things.
versus international organizations versus PIB. But here it's about consequence. If PIB says it's fake, it's down.
Yeah, so you have to understand right now also two very brief points. All Facebooks, all Twitters, they actually use a fact checker, authorized fact checkers, and if a link is coming in their network from and which a fact checker says is fake, they have to take it down. They do take it down, by the way. Number one. Number two, and the point that Sanjay Kapoor said, why is there is no consultation? This is the consultative process now. There is an intent that the government has announced. Please give consultation, please give inputs, and tell what should be the better and a correcter process, and work with the government to make a slightly more improved process. There won't be a perfect process to start with ever, but we need to work together to make sure that this is a process which the better democratic norms in this country are adhered to.
Okay. So, Arvind Gupta is talking about consultation and making a better process in place. Sanjay Hegde, your comments. Is this, in your view, just an attempt to muzzle the press? And do you think this will go any further, or is this a trial balloon that has been floated?
No, the rules are draft. Right now, it's a trial balloon. But going by what I know of government, whether this government or any other government, once somebody has drafted the rules, then you have a show of consultation and say that we've recorded all this, but we still think we are right and we are going ahead. At the end of the day, some Indian Information Service officer sitting out there in Shastri Bhavan saying, yes, this is fake, out you go. This is not fake, out, let it continue. How would you exactly qualify fake news in some circumstances? Just tell me this. Is Achhe Din Aayenge fake news or not fake news?
Okay. It's a very, very serious question. It's the question of the freedom of the press. Yes, Sanjay Jha.
The point that Sanjay Hegde made is absolutely on the spot, because see, there is so much of subjectivity and ambiguity in terms of how do you define a fake news. Now, this can become, and I'm going to say this very transparently, an instrument of political harassment. As a politician, I can tell you that because, politicians make statements very often which are rhetorical in nature. Now, it's very easy to kind of pick a statement up and say, hey, this is fake news. It may be rhetorical, it need not be fake. So I think at the end of the day, the government basically will almost control the narrative of the time, because you can actually make a particular individual or a political party look like that they are really peddlers of fake news. And I come back to the core point that the supplier of fake news could get away scot-free because the supplier could be the political party in power, whichever party it is. And therefore, it becomes a license to even more abuse, which can be catastrophic for a democracy. Because, Tamanna, let's face it, fake news is the biggest danger to a liberal democracy today.
Yes, fake news is a danger. The menace has to be tackled with, but we have to find a more efficient way, which doesn't kill news, calling it all fake. Who will decide what is fake news? How will we define what is fake news? These are pressing questions of our time, which is why we want to focus on it today on the show. But I will have to end it here. Thank you so much to all of you for joining us on the lead story on Beyond the Headline.